Hello all. Thanks for joining us today at our next Volaris group webinar. We're happy you all took the time out of your schedules today. Before we get things started, we've got just a short disclaimer on today's events. As you can imagine, AI is a fast-moving technology, and we just want to make it clear that today's discussion is presented for informational purposes only. So just pause for a moment while you review this note. Excellent. And with those formalities out of the way, we have kicked off a poll to get things started in the right-hand side of your portal. You can respond to that poll to help us get an understanding for where everyone's at in their AI journey as of today. We are thrilled to be hosting today's discussion on how vertical market software businesses are navigating this era of technology change and transformation. For those of you that don't know us, Volaris Group is a division of Constellation Software. We specialize in the acquisition and operation of vertical market software companies. We're home to about 300 software firms, each operating independently with the support of Volaris Group to add our best practices, context on AI transformation, and other resources to those software operations. As we just give folks another second to complete that poll, and we will bring up the results. Interesting to see that many of you are still approaching this with gains only in some areas, so some room for improvement. Bit reassuring that folks are have a view on where to start, but only about a third of you or a quarter of you are firing on all cylinders. So some things to learn from our panel today, but some good context to keep things moving. We have assembled a great pair of GMs from across Volaris Group for this discussion today. So thank you both for joining us. I'll start with just some quick introductions. Crystal Germond leads Equip, a vertical market software business serving asset and equipment management firms for highly regulated customers. She came into the leadership seat at Equip from a role in sales and marketing and took the GM role just as Equip was spun out as an independent business unit. In 2025, she made the decision to re-platform the business while also completing one of the largest implementations in the company's history. So she's now 10 months into that journey, and I think ready to share some insight from what she's learned on that process with us today. Thanks for joining us, Crystal.
Thank you.
Greg Richards leads AssetWorks Fleet, one of our very long-established vertical market software companies here at Volaris Group. They serve fleet operators in the public and private sectors. AssetWorks is a complicated multi-product organization with a very deep customer base, and Greg's been driving a portfolio of AI initiatives across that business for the better part of 2 years now, beginning with some voluntary experimentation, which by his own admission didn't really stick, and has now moved on a model with mandated initiatives, internal champions, and a more deliberate structure that reports directly to Greg as GM of the business. So excited to hear a little bit about that experience and what you've learned through that, Greg. Thanks for joining us.
You bet.
Excellent. So maybe we'll start off our conversation today with a discussion around some of the pressures that AI is placing on vertical markets businesses. Greg, I think every founder watching this has been reading the same headlines that you and I have. Analysts arguing about whether AI is a complement to the VMS sector or whether it's a replacement for it. From your seat inside that business with a long customer history, how real do you see that threat, and where do you think this public conversation might be getting it wrong?
Well, I think it's obviously a threat, right? But certainly not any time to panic. I think it's a disruptor for our competitors and frankly everybody else as much as it is for us. If you look at what AssetWorks does, right? We've got years, sometimes decades worth of data. We built these enduring trust relationships with customers. It's how do you use AI to change the way your customers do business? And I think a lot of people are looking at this like chatbots and bolt-ons and things like that. But I think we really have a unique as vertical market software providers to really understand our customers' business processes and deploy AI against how do we make them more efficient? How do we make their jobs better? How do we solve their staffing problems, right? And a great example of how AI has really helped us out is it's a force multiplier. So just like it's a disruptor for small companies like us, it's a disruptor for big companies. I was sitting in an RFP meeting with a really large customer, and I knew that one of the other major competitors was a multi-billion-dollar company with a lot more reach. And they asked me a question, sort of, off the cuff. They said, "What do you do when you get a call at 2 a.m. and it's somebody speaking Swedish?" Well, we're not that big a company. We don't have a Swedish help desk. And I sort of laughed and said, "Well, I'm going to have to look into that." And they sort of followed up and said, "Well, that's not even the hardest problem. What are you going to do when you get a question in Swahili?" So before we would have said, "Hey, that's not really something we can do." However, we've been integrating AI into our customer management systems, including languages. And so real time, while I was in the bidder conference, I actually got on chat with my support leader, and I said, "Hey, tell me how to make a multi-asset work order. Ask the AI, how do you make a multi-asset work order? And then give me the response in Swahili." And literally 2 minutes later, I was able to go to the purchasing agent and say, "Okay, here, yeah, we can do it." And that's not a capability as a small company that we would have ever had before. So it really is a game changer in a lot of ways. And I look at this as I'd rather disrupt my own market than let somebody else disrupt my market.
Right. There's a powerful new set of capabilities that your team has access to there that's quite compelling. Crystal, I think you've been quite candid in the prep for this session today that resistance was real to some of the changes that you tried to implement around AI at Equip, and that came from all directions, above, alongside, below. For those wondering whether this resistance they're feeling right now as they try and transform their business is real, maybe you can talk a little bit about what that actually looked like, and what did you learn about why people resist these AI transformation changes, even when these are probably for the good.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. I think if we as leaders sit with our own discomfort and our own feelings and thoughts, and I would say fear about what AI could do or what AI might mean for us in our businesses, it's not that far of a leap to think like, okay, well, our team members, our team is feeling the same. Our management is feeling the same, leadership above me, our customers. And so where I've started it from is a personal journey of thinking about what would this mean for, what could this mean for Equip as from our competitors and from our industry, like Greg said. I agree with him. I would rather disrupt our industry than have a competitor to do it. And I'd rather be a first mover. With AI, like so much, there's first mover advantage. And I would rather me and my team be figuring it out. It's very figure outable what to do. We have to do something. If we don't do anything and there's inertia and an action, we're probably falling behind, right? So recognizing that truth, I'd rather us move first, figure it out first, days, weeks, months ahead of our competitors, and then be having to force to do that later than not. So what does that mean? Like, how do we become unstuck? It means that we have to start talking about things we're not used to talking about in a professional context, which sometimes is our thoughts and feelings, our thoughts about something before we know an answer, our hunches when something is ambiguous. What are we leaning towards if something's not black and white or we don't have all the data yet? There is a comfort with being uncomfortable and a comfort with ambiguity that this AI transformation is forcing all of us to go through. And so for me, I'm very compartmentalized. I don't talk about feelings a lot. I'm a marketer. I'm used to talking about data. I'm used to testing and proving something before I say it's going to work and not going out on a limb and saying this is what it's going to happen if I'm not sure. But none of us are in a position where we have the luxury of certainty anymore. So we have to get good at doing that in cycles. So as I did that with everyone, who I report to, my leadership, the team that reports to me, and now with customers, it's the same cycle. Sometimes the very valid questions of, well, what if, or what might happen, those are valid. We should talk about that and collaborate, and that's part of the context. But once we do that and we have that conversation, if the feeling in the room hasn't moved, if the conversation hasn't moved, that's an indicator for me, then we're dealing with something else, which might be emotion. And those emotions might be anxiety, fear, and that those are valid emotions, but not valid in a business context if they allow us to remain stuck and they lead to inaction. So that's really been the work. And that type of work, that type of collaboration, those type of conversations that at least me and my team were not used to having before, we have on a regular basis now with our partners, now with our customers. And I think that is the work of this journey that's very different than how we were doing business before, at least within my team.
And an interesting new ask for leaders, right, as they move through that process, trying to bring that level of vulnerability, sort of new context, change management skill to bear on these problems that were maybe viewed as technology implementation challenges previously. So it's really insightful. Greg, AssetWorks gave its teams room to experiment with AI, I think you said for almost 2 years before that you really had to pivot that strategy. By your own admission, that was a lot of effort. It was well-intentioned, it was resourced, but it didn't take hold. What did you learn from that experience, and what do you think what do you think you know now about the difference between giving people permission to try and actually moving the organization with strategy forward?
No, it's complete transparency. I really messed it up the first time. The great thing about being part of Volaris is we have all of these opportunities for learning. I can learn from people like Crystal and Ryan and other people doing the same job, right? So we had a session like that, and we got our first inkling of AI 2 years ago. And I thought I was pretty forward thinking. I came back and I bought everybody Microsoft Copilot, and we got subscriptions to ChatGPT, and I said, go forth and use AI and be productive. And about a year later, it was pretty clear that there was about 10% of the organization that was kind of using it. I would say that they were mostly dabbling. And I couldn't point to any tangible ROI in the organization. And to Crystal's point, there are people in the organization where this is hard, right? If you've spent your whole life defining your self-worth on the quality of the code you write, and suddenly we're telling you your new job is to manage agents, that's a very difficult transition. So what I actually did is I pulled 3 people out of their day jobs, and I took a really hard problem. We had a piece of our software, and this is probably familiar to a lot of people on the call. It was old. It had a lot of tech debt. The UI wasn't great. I used to refer to it as kind of the Windows 95 experience. And I said, I want that to be completely redone. I want it to be modern. I want it to be to work on a variety of different mobile platforms. We picked Angular. Oh, and by the way, our user conference is in 3 months. You need to have it done by then. Mm-hmm. And the other thing I did is I picked people who had never worked on that product before, because they didn't bring the baggage. They didn't want to tell me, hey, this is why we made that decision 10 years ago, right? And the amazing thing is, everybody thought the goal was, obviously unattainable when we threw it out there. They got done early. They were actually able to use the AI to understand the product and to rebuild the user interface for that specific module in about 60 days.
That's great. That's great. Part of probably what has helped you do that, Greg, was finding these AI champions throughout your organization. I think in our discussions around this, you've indicated that one of the best AI hires you made didn't come from engineering or data scientists or data science, but was a customer-facing manager, Gary Wong. Can you talk us through a bit of how Gary became the person driving AI at AssetWorks, and how that kind of link with customer insight and intelligence and this sort of experience on that has helped you drive it forward? What did you learn about AI talent and where you might find it through that experience?
That's a great point. And I wasn't going to say his name because I don't want anybody on the call to poach him. So please don't say Gary. And to those of the people that I've hired previously in other roles, one of the best hires. I value everybody equally. But yeah, so Gary joined the company about 3 years ago as a customer service manager. Which is typically not a technology role. It's more of a customer-facing case management role. But he had an enormous amount of passion around the topic. And what he brought to the table is the day-to-day interactions with customers, right? When you're in engineering, a lot of times you don't ever get to talk to the customer. So he got to hear their real-world pain points. And it's the same kind of thing, right? He never written software before. So to some extent, he was unencumbered by what couldn't be done. He just started using the tools. And this is a great example of a product where that we'll talk about a little bit more, but he was actually able to jump in. We surrounded him with some other folks that had some product management knowledge and also some engineering knowledge. but not really having any preconceived notions about what could or couldn't be done was able to really drive some of our key product features forward. And in this case, is building now a brand new product out for our customers. And I think that's the takeaway, by the way, right? Is it's not necessarily the technology leaders in your organization. And it's not even in a lot of cases, your best programmers. It could be, but it's the people, I would say, that have that curious nature.
That's great. One, I think, Crystal, you've talked quite a bit inside Volaris Group around what it takes to lead through this uncertainty. And I know you came to the leadership role from a marketing background, not an engineering one. Looking back on the last 10 months, how's that shaped the way that you've led through this moment, or led in ways that you maybe didn't expect? And what advice would you give to leaders who think maybe they're not technical enough to lead through this moment? Some guidance for those folks on the call would be helpful.
Honestly, this has been a really validating experience based on my experience as a marketer. Because when our company split and I took over as GM, I had been in the business since Equip was acquired, but on the sales and marketing side, we were a small team, just as I always have collaborated really closely with the product team and the technical team, customer support, professional services, but all of those departments, all those roles I just mentioned, I've never been directly responsible for them. So there was a lot of uncertainty for myself. Could I do this role? Could I do this well? But I've never doubted that I'm the best person to lead this company at this time, because I could see, which like many marketers, I think this is a marketing skill, I could see a vision for the future of our company and our products and how to walk backwards from that vision to today in a way that other people couldn't. And I think that's a marketing skill. We don't just tell stories and do emails and branding, but we oftentimes with the leadership are the ones that can see a future that doesn't yet exist, and then can also make the plan and take the steps to walk back from that future. I call it, we can fly to the moon and we can put the stake down, the flag in the moon, and then we can come back to Earth and tell everybody what it was like and how we can all get there. That's what it's felt like. As marketers, we do that all the time with product launches, with going into new markets. I mean, we're doing that always. Now, this was that on steroids. This is an uncertain future that's hitting the whole world and the whole technology company in a way we haven't seen in a long time, right? At least not in my working life. But it didn't feel that different. And I would say those same skills about listening, being open, not being transparent about not knowing the answers, being unsure, but having a hunch based on data and being able to explain why. Like I said before, those were all things that have been absolutely critical for this moment of creating this vision for where we could go and some options for how we could get there, and then how to bring everybody along in the interim. So yeah, I always think marketers have superpowers, and that's one of them. And I think we all need to do that in our own ways, not just for our businesses and our products, but for your role, your department. And I think empowering our teams to see this, to see the fear and uncertainty and be honest about that, like I was saying before, but then the exciting fun part of, okay, what could this mean now? How could we reimagine or dream finally, things we wouldn't have said before. I know my professional services team, we're a heavy professional services business. We do a lot of highly configured implementations. And we've dealt with the same frustrations for so long, like Greg said, the Windows 95 experience. So what are those embedded frustrations that the team has been grappling with for years? And this is an opportunity to think, what if that problem didn't exist anymore? What would that look like? How could we get there? I mean, that's what I heard Greg say in his example. And we've had many of those too. So once you move past it and you start to collectively create that vision together, it actually leads to this momentum and this excitement that I hadn't seen ever within our business.
Yeah, it's great. And I think, Greg, this is a good transition into something I wanted to ask you about in terms of how you're changing the way that teams work in many ways around this. One of the more striking observations coming out of a lot of this AI work is that the strongest individual contributors aren't doing the same job they were 2 years ago. They're managing teams of AI agents maintenance. They might be the human management layer above them is changing in response to this moment. What does that shift look like inside your company, and what does it demand from you as a leader? What sort of skills or new capabilities have you had to deploy in this sort of new team dynamic?
Well, I mean, it's like we talked about, right? I mean, this is a shift for a lot of folks. And candidly, I had an employee come to me and say, "Hey, if my job becomes managing agents, I don't want to do it anymore." And he actually was a voluntary attrition, and that's okay. We want to handle that with empathy. But one of the great things Volaris has done is this thing called AI accelerators, where you can pick individual contributors from around the organization, from marketing, from engineering. I sent a salesperson even, and you can give them a real world use case of, hey, this is the product or the problem I'd like to solve for our customers. And it's typically a week. It's a very intense experience. And what you find is, they come back having likely solved the problem, or the vast majority of it, or built the feature, or in my case, even developed almost a completely new product in this week. And then that really serves as the incubator inside the organization for other people to follow that process. But I think the aha moment for me was I had to get personally involved. And that it took the form of actually sitting down with the team in these accelerator sessions to understand what the business processes need to be. And in the first couple of teams, actually even having them directly report to me as effectively a change agent, right? The great news is, now that we've had a couple of these proof points where people have seen their coworkers go off and use the AI and come back with completely different models on how they do business, it really does then serve as kind of a beacon for the rest of the organization, and it does start to take hold. And that's how you build that cultural shift of how you're going to do your jobs in the organization, just one proof point at a time.
Yeah, offering those sort of AI accelerator journeys to our business has been a key tactic that we've deployed inside Volaris over the next bit. And I know folks can access some video and real life testimonials from folks that have gone through those sessions on our LinkedIn page. We've been quite transparent about what that transformation is looking like inside our businesses and the way that they've been able to navigate that. It's been really important.
And if I could just add to that, so we came away, we talked about Gary Wang. We came away from one of those sessions, went straight to our user conference, actually demoed the product that we had built in that accelerator session, and got real-time feedback from customers saying, hey, that solves a real business need for us. You clearly understand the pain points of our business. Again, back to that trust ratio from years of experience. And we actually got customers that bought it at the show. And this was something that we only developed using AI 60 days before.
That's great, really inspiring. To tee up the next bit of our conversation, we're activating a poll inside the platform where you can respond to who is supporting your company's AI efforts. So take a second to respond to that as we move through the next couple of questions to provide some context. Crystal, in this kind of theme of who's supported your business, you've relied on a partnership with the Volaris business transformation team out of our headquarters at Volaris to assist with your replatforming. That team came in with a small group, no history, no relationships with the code, no relationships or no previous experience with the code base. What did that team offer you that sort of your own team benefited, and how you could work alongside them?
It's a hard question to answer because the team has done so much for us. Ian, Chris, Jeff. I mean, I've described it. I mean, as talking to them was like, for me, a weight off my back and a breath of fresh air. Where with them, I didn't have to do the work that I was doing all day, every day that I described of sharing the vision with someone and getting them to walk backwards from it with me, or telling them, hey, this is your step in the process toward vision. They saw the vision immediately and actually pushed me to say, you're not thinking big enough. You could do more. It's even bigger or even more potential than you're even realizing right now. And that was amazing for me. So they pulled me along to an even bigger realization for what AI could do for eQuip and how quickly it could have an impact for eQuip and our products and customers than I was even able to understand. And that was pretty magical, to be honest, at the beginning. I mean, the power of someone with credibility who was doing it with insight to say, yes, and this. And that enabled all of us to move faster. It wasn't easy. It came with a lot of challenges because it was not an overnight decision, but I think it felt like that to many of within our business and within our teams, where, I made the call to say, we are going to significantly change our product. We're going to change the way we do our work, and we're starting this tomorrow. We're doing it tomorrow, and not just with one product. We only have one product. Across the board, everyone's doing it. We're all moving in this direction. Everybody's getting on the bus. What does that look like? And I was able to do that, not just because of that team and others as well, which I think we'll talk about with the support of Volaris and people like Greg, but really the business transformation team helped give me clarity on what was possible and gave me some certainty where there hadn't been a lot of how quickly we could move. They gave me more data, and they were able to show me over, tell me, and they did that.
And pushed you too, right?
Pushed me and pushed, and then embedded, and then we were embedded as a pod together. Like Greg said, this was the advice that they gave me, Chris, and I was coachable and took the advice. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to form a pod. It'll be me. It'll be my head of engineering. It will be my head of PS at the time, and the business transformation team. And we are going to work together, collaborating day to day. And at the end of the day, when a call needs to be made, I'm going to make the call, and it's going to be a hard call, and we're going to move forward. That was very hard to do. And it was very hard to do at that pace and at that level of depth within our business. But the conviction that it had to be done came from the insight and the support that team brought me. So we wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for them.
It's a very real example of how you're leading your business with autonomy, making decisions about the company you're operating, but not doing that doing that alone, right?
Exactly. And it's not in isolation. You're not by yourself.
Yeah, it's really powerful. Maybe we can bring up the poll results and see how our attendees are garnering support. But it sounds like folks have taken some of that advice and created dedicated internal teams around this, but still relying to a small extent on external vendors and departmental leaders to lead this transformation. So, Greg, looking at those results, it's an interesting point to pivot into. I think the next thing we want to talk about is you sort of mixed up your teams to put fresh eyes on these challenges, but still had a customer support backlog that had been a pain point for you for years. You solved this eventually by partnering with a third party around some AI solutions. The connections to make that happen took place through the Volaris ecosystem. And you were able to sort of build a partnership that made some of the solutioning possible for you. Can you talk a little bit about how you approached that and what value being inside our network of businesses was able to provide as you made those decisions and made that happen?
Great point. And we tend to talk about AI primarily in terms of either what's going to be in the product or how it's going to help us make products faster. But there's, it could be in sales, it could be in finance. In my case, it was customer support. So to your point, we had a fairly significant backlog of cases. And even when you hire new employees, it's going to take them a long time to learn a product that had features built over decades. So my initial goal was actually very simple. It was, is there some company out there, and shameless plug for Mosaic, that can plug into my case management system and crawl through all of my documentation, all the Confluence and all the Jira and the PDF documents from 2005, right? So that when I get a new agent on board, a new customer support agent, they can quickly get an answer to a problem. And to your point, back to this great support structure inside Volaris, I was introduced to this company called Mosaic. Now, what that morphed into through brainstorming is, well, if we can make information readily accessible to brand new customer support agents, we can also do self-help for customers, right? They can go on and ask the question. And that morphed into, well, but how do we make sure that we have answers to all the questions they may ask? So let's use the AI to crawl all of our cases. And if there's something that's come up, say, more than 2 or 3 times, we know that's probably a pervasive question. Let's have the AI build a knowledge article about it. And then the next step becomes, and this may be familiar to a lot of you, right? You can very quickly go from having a case backlog to a bug backlog. And that's exactly what happened. And the common complaint from engineering in every organization I've been in is, well, we just don't get enough information to build a reproducible test case, right? We can't duplicate it. And the aha moment was, because I was just going to go try to train the customer support reps to ask the right questions. We actually, using the same tool from Mosaic, built an agent that elicits the information directly from the customer on the problem they're seeing, determines if it's a bug, and then actually populates that into Jira, which is our engineering system that we use to manage our user stories and epics, which now gets picked up by another agent that does the triage on the bug. And in this case, we didn't have to build any of that ourselves. Going to somebody that actually had the tools off the shelf really got us into production much faster. From the time I signed the PO with the company until we were actually seeing tangible results, honestly, it was only about 30 days.
It's great you were able to approach that decision with a bit of confidence, knowing that you were working with a trusted partner that had been kind of deployed throughout the ecosystem previously, relying on the experience of other leaders throughout the business to sort of stress test those partnerships and make sure that they're the right fit for companies of our type and scale.
Yeah, it really helped to have somebody that had been vetted and that we knew would be real.
That's great. So, Crystal, we'll turn the last question over to you on how we can turn some of these advantages into innovation. But before we do so, I'll just make a reminder to the audience that we will take some audience questions at the end of our formal conversation here. So please feel free to add your questions into the chat inside the system there. There's likely a founder watching this at the moment who is in the middle of the hardest stretch they've ever had in their company history. I think we're all going through some of what feels like bit of an period, but want to come out of this with a degree of confidence. We believe in our products, our customers love these businesses, but again, we're in this context of rough headlines, and we're all wondering what the next chapter is. Can you maybe wrap us up with some advice for what they should do tomorrow morning? How should they think about this problem?
I think you should find some help. You should get someone to help you and talk to you, someone who's either been there or is thinking the same way as you are, who you're aligned with. Because I think one of the loneliest things, leadership can be lonely. And one of the loneliest things is to see something no one else sees and not have the help to get there. There's some responsibility that our teams have for us to work together towards that. But there's also some responsibility, I think, that we have as leaders to surround ourselves and to push ourselves and be open to being pushed to a direction that we can't yet see. And I think that takes community and it takes collaboration. I personally have had my own business. I've run a PR marketing firm. I've worked for large firms. I've been in the startup. I've had a startup background. That's how I got into software with VC-led startup accelerators and incubators. Those were great. We had coaching, we had mentors, we had programs that we went through as a team. But at the end of the day, it's just us as a small team, and we were really limited to colleagues and kind of allies we could find along the way, because we either couldn't share certain information or the context was just so different, we wouldn't have been able to get on the same page fast enough. But that's not the case at Volaris. That's one of the reasons why I love being in this context and invested my career here, and why I'm so certain when I try to recruit someone to join our team that what they're joining is a really powerful network, but it is more importantly a space for learning and collaboration. Greg is an amazing example. I don't know if you remember this because you probably do it so much, Greg, but it was a really important moment to me. We were in Indianapolis. We were at a conference for PS and R&D leaders in our businesses. And he had, I think, just taken over AssetWorks fleet as a GM. And I was like, hey, he seems like a nice guy. He obviously is very experienced. He has a lot. I feel I have a lot to learn from him, but I don't know if he's going to have the time of day for me because my small internal problems with Equip. But I just, I pulled him aside, asked him a question in the hallway. And, you sat with me in that hallway for an hour, asking me questions just as a space to reflect. And the questions were really poignant and they pointed me in the right direction. They gave me some clarity on some things I hadn't been thinking about. And they gave me some certainty on some things I knew that I knew, but I couldn't articulate. And that was a huge help and a huge support when I then went to the business transformation team and the group and portfolio I report to, for why I was asking them to invest and equip in this way and take this risk with me. I had already kind of pressure tested it and workshopped it with Greg ad hoc in this 1 hour side hallway conversation. And I don't see him that much, but I know that if I sent him a Teams message and I asked him for a call, he would do it for me. And so would so many GMs, and not even just the GMs, leaders of departments at Volaris. I can't also really sum up how much it's mean to watch colleagues from many different backgrounds advance and grow over the years, and even to just see them once a year in the hallways. Many of them are on Greg's team again, but other businesses too, and be able to talk with them about a problem that we're all sharing because we're similarly sized vertical software businesses and we have the same ownership. So there's a level of transparency and candidness that we can have and really kind of get to the heart of it fast and learn and teach each other. And we're open. It is a community of some of the smartest people I've ever known who are open to sharing and want to help, truly. And I don't know where else you really get that. I haven't found it anywhere else. I wouldn't be here in this GM role if it wasn't for the so many, people that have helped me along the way. Lauren Gaglietti, Jacqueline, some of the, Ryan and some of the other marketers. I can workshop and go over things in a trusted conversation in a way that I couldn't somewhere else. So yeah, and I want to, pay it forward. And now I'm able to do that for others. And as I hope I've done this whole time. So it is really rare. It is okay to not know the answer. It is okay to ask for help. And this is a time when we all should be asking for help and acknowledging that we don't know all the answers, but we can figure it out. We can figure it out together. We're doing it.
Yeah, it's a great example, Crystal, of how the power of a peer learning network and that best practice sharing across our portfolio is really, I think, enabled a very interesting sort of next level way of dealing with this period of change and transformation. It's a really powerful example. We are getting in a few questions from the audience, so maybe if you're both open to it, we'll take a few of those and pivot there. So one. There we go. It's on the screen. So a question for you, Crystal. Under the pressure of AI, it feels like everyone should be picking up the pace. How is that pressure playing out for individual contributors, and how do you think what do you think is the best practice for engaging with them?
It's an interesting question. So to me, that sounds like someone who sees it, gets it, and is excited, and maybe the people that they're working directly with around them aren't seeing it or aren't as excited. I would say that for me, I'll answer it in two ways. And Greg, I'd be curious what you think. Like, I personally think that that responsibility of what you're asking for is shared by the leader, the general manager, the CEO. I feel really strongly that we, in our roles, need to be in the trenches day to day doing this work and not delegating it to anyone, not delegating it out what we could be doing. We can try to delegate it, but I can guarantee you we won't get far. We have to do the personal hard work of going in there, sitting with some of these questions ourselves so we can help others along, like Greg and I have been talking about. And if we're not able to do that, then we're going to be limited, and we're going to have people on our teams, like I think the person asking the question, who's trying to do that him or herself, but limited in their effectiveness because they're not in the position to make the decisions that I can make, or kind of broad-based decisions that someone like Greg and I can make. So I think with individual contributors who are feeling like other people need to move faster, I say, hey, you get it, you see it. How can we enable and empower you? Can you be on a different team? Can you be working on something differently? Like Greg and I have talked about doing with our teams. But I'd also say this is an opportunity to come together as a team. And I would say that the person in the GM or the CEO role, we need to be kind of getting in there in the trenches and mixing things up, maybe breaking some things and moving things along to help the people on our teams that see it. Because I want to retain those people. I want those people to be doing that for my team. And I think that if we can't do that, they'll join teams that are doing it. I have had 2 new leaders join my team in the past year because of what we were doing and where we're at, because they want to be moving at that pace and in that direction. That's the risk we're taking when we don't do it. So I hope that answers the question, but I feel really strongly that the leaders need to be in the trenches driving the change. And that is my little soapbox for calling for that.
Maybe to add to that, if I may, too. I mean, in most cases, none of us are startups anymore, right? We've got long tenured employees that have been doing the job, for a long time. So a lot of folks aren't working the hours you would be working at a startup, right? And obviously we want our employees to have work-life balance. But one of the things I've seen is for the folks that get into it and buy into the vision, this is fun. It's actually reinvigorating them, right? So you do get the people that say, hey, I had some time this weekend and I built this new thing, or I was working last night and I was able to solve this problem using AI, because it's kind of a new way of doing business, and they're learning new things, and it's exciting.
Yeah, I think there's opportunities all around here, right? For the folks that are bringing that sort of change orientation and stepping into these new skills and really seizing these new opportunities. It's a really great moment for folks that are sort of stepping up into this.
Can I say one thing to Ryan? Sorry. Yeah. I also want to say that it is okay to not be the person who's working nights and weekends with Claude and blowing out your AI usage budget. And it might not mean that you're not excited about it or not passionate, but you've got other stuff going on, and that's just not where you're at right now. I think that is okay too. I think we need to be bringing everybody along, means recognizing where everybody is at, but aligning on a goal together as a team. And as long as that alignment is there, there's going to be some of us that are more passionate and are going above and beyond, and there's opportunities there. That's creating opportunity, like Greg said, but it's okay not to do that. But what I think is not okay is to not be seeing the potential, and in some way allowing AI to change the way you're thinking and doing your work. And on many of our teams, like Greg and I's, that's the mandate that we're working on, so we can all collectively move as fast as we need to be moving. So I do just want to say that it is okay not to be doing it on nights and weekends, but I would say, like, how are you using your day and the time you are focused on your work, and how are you using that time, and how is that changing? That I think is a good question to ask.
It seems like everybody has a problem they've always wanted to solve, and we didn't have the resources or the tools or whatever to do it. And AI changes that, right? So people can actually take the initiative and say, I'm going to go solve that problem.
Yeah, on their own if they wanted to, but better together. Bring it back to us, and what did you do? And I want to change. That's interesting. What can we do with it? Anyway, I hope that answers the question for that person.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for that candor. In that same vein, we've got another question in from the chat around the difference between sort of healthy skepticism and healthy critique. But looking at that with an understanding of how not all folks are going to embrace this journey, and that might require some difficult career decisions for some others. So how do you tell the difference between folks with that healthy skepticism and those that just are maybe not the right fit for your business?
At least in my case, employees have been fairly transparent about it. To Crystal's point, I've been doing skip levels and skip levels, and really trying to understand from the folks that are impacted by this how they're feeling about it. And the folks that really are not going to get on the boat, have been very clear about not wanting to do it. And that again, that's okay, right? We want to handle that with empathy, but we also need to let them know that that's not the business model going forward. And we need to put metrics in place that support that. So one of the things we're now doing every month is we're measuring how much code was created by AI versus how much was created manually. So it becomes part of the MBOs.
Yeah, and I would say for us, there's been a variety. So because we're a pretty small team, and because the change that we've gone through with our product and how we work has been so central, I've felt the resistance, from kind of all angles in different ways. Certainly some folks were really upfront, like Greg said. Now, in my experience, that's usually been the technology team members, the individuals whose jobs are development. They were really kind of coming at it from many different perspectives of should we or should we not do it this way or this way. And I think there's a room, and there should be room in any good, healthy culture and team for debate and dissent. Because if we say this is the way, or this is, we know now we've just replicated the challenges we had in the past. I don't think that's what Greg or I are saying, is to stay open, right? Like, and curious. So I think some healthy debate is a good thing. We kind of touched on this earlier, though, and it can be hard to see because sometimes skepticism or resistance comes in a quiet form of a death by 1,000 cuts, with just, no, we can't do this, or that's going to take a little bit longer, and then it never happens. Or the result's just not there. So it can happen slowly too, and I think that's harder to see. But we have to. I think that's something I've been kind of trained up on now, and as leaders, we can all be trained on, like, how does skepticism or resistance look differently within our teams, getting to know the individuals. Like we were saying, sitting with some people one-on-one, everyone, or as many people as possible, really, I would say everyone. So you learn kind of where the core of that is coming from. Is it like a meta existential problem? Is it some fear and anxiety about your role? That's valid. How can I speak to that? What can I share one-on-one that maybe information someone doesn't have, to alleviate that? How can we talk and collaborate and think it through together? If we do that work together and it still is there, then the inaction is there. That is where I think, that needs to be spoken about directly and candidly and clearly, to say, hey, this is resistance, and we've done all these things and it's still here. Why? And now there's a point where we have to move forward together, where we can make different decisions, and that's okay. But yeah, I think it really is the being in the trenches, and that looks like one-on-one and leading differently for different individuals, and being open and listening.
And it's how you message it, right? Yeah. So one of the things I've done is to be very clear. This is about delivering innovation to our customers faster. It's not about cost cutting. We're not trying to eliminate anybody's job. This is about making you more efficient, and ideally your job more fulfilling, while you're doing amazing things for our customers.
Better, faster.
This is a great segue into the final question that I was going to pull out of our chat here, just around those customer relationships. How do you tell the difference between a customer relationship that is genuinely defensible and one that just might feel defensible because nobody's tried it yet? So I think we pride ourselves on these generational, customer relationships inside Volaris, and we know that those are such an important asset to our businesses in this moment. You need to know what to build, and what to build for real customers that need to buy those solutions. And you're both so good at this. Maybe just reflecting a bit on the nature and durability of those customer relationships and what that means for your business.
You want to go first, Crystal?
Man, what a good question.
Great question, yeah.
I guess I always have to give I'm going to give an honest answer, like, as all my answers are, like, candidly. I don't think any relationship with anyone, our customers, each other, is just so rock solid and can't be changed, or can't be lost if we don't work at it, if we're not investing in trying. If I understand the question correctly, are we saying that basically, are our competitive moats as strong as we think they are? I think the answer is no, they're not. No, they're not. And I think there's a lot of examples. In our industry, we've had a subset of our market, and I've told this story quite a few times, but I'll share it here with this new audience, that we had a subset of our market that we thought for sure we would own this new subset. We were well positioned to take over from the legacy competitor. We were doing that. And a small firm came in. They were able to deliver something better, cheaper, and faster than even we were. We had cut the legacy cost and delivery time in half. They were able to do it about 5 to 6 times faster than we were. And we couldn't figure out at first how they were doing it. Well, they were a small shop of just a few people, I think 3 or 4, and they figured out how to use AI early. We know that now, and they took that sub-market away from us. And I think we can get it back in the future, but it's going to take more time. So it can happen. At the end of the day, our customers are buying our solutions to fulfill a goal or a need for their businesses and their jobs and their roles, and they're relying on us to do their jobs and do their jobs well. if we can't deliver on that promise, how can we say that the relationship will endure no matter what? I just don't think that is the way we should be thinking about it. I think the promise that we're making every day with our products and with our service and with our teams, I think we need to back that up. And I think we need to hold ourselves accountable for that. I have found that when you do that, and when you do that candidly with your customers, and when you work with them and you're honest about where you've made mistakes or where things haven't gone well, there's actually patience and there's actually grace, and they will work with you. But not if you're not honest about it, not if you don't acknowledge it, not if you don't say you're going to be better and then you don't, you don't do better, then I think the relationship is defensible. But those pieces have to be in place first.
Maybe to add to that, there's an old adage in sales, right? Organizations don't buy from organizations. People buy from people, and generally from people that they like and trust, right? So
it's the trust, right, Greg?
Yeah, you've got to have that trust relationship. And so my litmus test is, do I have a strong enough relationship with the customer that, or somebody from my team, and I have executive sponsors for a lot of our accounts as well. Do we have a strong enough relationship when the customer needs something else? Do they call you first and say, hey, do you sell a product that will solve this need? Mm-hmm. But I think certainly in this context, right, we absolutely can't take that for granted. So that's the table stakes are that we have to be able to innovate just as fast as everybody else. And there's a maxim, I think it's actually from the head of NVIDIA, right? That your job or your company or your role or your product isn't going to be replaced by AI. It's going to be replaced by somebody that's using AI better than you.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think it's like another good litmus test is, are you hearing some dissent or are you having feedback? Are you hearing anything? Are they talking to you, right? Like, I know that our customer support and customer success colleagues are always beating this drum, but the feedback really is a gift. That's not just a phrase, that's a hand wave. The feedback is a gift. It's a gift from our employees. It's a gift from our customers. And as long as someone's talking to me, giving me feedback, telling me if we didn't do we can work with that, right? It's the silence that I fear. Those conversations are, I think, where the real work happens. And personally, and I think for many members of my team, is where the meaning is and where the excitement is and where the purpose is for why we do this,
And I always joke, I've never had a good idea, but boy, my customers have great ideas.
Yeah.
Great. Maybe with that, we'll wrap up today's proceedings. So thanks, Greg. Thanks, Crystal. Really appreciate your candor and transparency talking through these challenges. I think this will be helpful for a lot of folks that joined us here today. If anyone is interested in continuing the conversation with Volaris Group, you can hit that Contact Us button in the platform there, and we will connect you with a team of peers across Volaris Group. We're always happy to network with founders and business leaders and see how we can find alignment between our two organizations and work together. So thank you so much for the conversation today, and thank you for all of those who took time out of your Tuesday to join us today. Appreciate the chat.
Thank you, Ryan.